David Cheslow is going to do on Shabbos, the daf. Okay. Okay, I'll start off with the learning sponsors. Today is the 4th, right? Yeah. Year of Learning by Sue and Ann Gerlich, in memory of Malka Pearl Mann and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch and Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Henya Rivka Pearl Rosna bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. In memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, share her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, China Bas Yeshaya. Friends of Toby Peres, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov. Friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim, Charlie Gelfenstein, and Sam Levine, in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Matla bat Asher. The Month of Learning by Mel and Haran Haller, in memory of his brother Yaakov ben Avraham, Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of his father David ben Fishel Halevi and her mother Bela bat Avraham, Del Bodlander, in memory of his wife Udal bas Yehuda Tzvi. Also a Month of Learning by Stephanie and Fred Mortman, for the Refuah Shlema of her daughter Mazal bat Sarah Malka. We also have a Week of Learning by Jack Gilman, in memory of his mother Elka bat Yeshayahu. Today, being the 4th of July, we have Mel Grossman sponsoring a Day of Learning in memory of his mother, Fredel Bas Yehuda Leib. May Shabbos have an Aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velta Yeshua Shem Matzliah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Geben Shtiyah.
Amen.
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 All right, so just to check where we are. Okay, today should be paid Dalit, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, but I think to understand it better, we're just going to go back a little bit to the bottom of the previous Amud, okay, where the Gemara started, Misha Nashcho Kelev Shotev V'chule. Okay, that piece about being bitten by a rabid or mad dog. Okay, and the Gemara cites the Braita, Tanu Rabbanan, Chamisha Dvarim Ne'emru B'Kelev Shotev. 5 things were said regarding being bitten by a mad dog. 1, Piv Patuach, his mouth is open. Okay, in other words, the tongue is hanging out. Verero no teif, and the saliva drips. V'aznav tzruchot, and his ears are floppy. Okay, uznavo munach al yarkotav, and his tail is sort of, I don't know, I guess on his hindquarter or hanging down. In other words, it doesn't wave as normal. Umahalech b'tzidei drachim, and he goes along the sides of the road. V'yesh omrim, and there are those who say also, af noveach ve'en kolo nishma, that when he barks, it's difficult to hear his voice, right? He doesn't sound strong. Mimai have, okay, based on this, what do we say? Rav Amar, Nashim Kashfaniyot Mesachakot Bo. Says Rav that women that indulge in magic, in other words, witches, use the dog for their purposes. Shmuel Amar Ruach Ra'ah Shora Alav. But Shmuel explains it that instead there's an evil spirit on the dog. And so they asked in the Gemara, Mai Beinayu, what's the difference between the two? And we continue, Ika Beinayu, as we go on to today's daf, Lemiktale B'davar HaNizrak, in order to kill the animal with something that is thrown. Okay? In other words, either throw a spear, shoot an arrow, something of that nature.
Not to get close to him.
You don't get close to it, exactly. And Tanya Kavate de Shmuel. And the Braita was taught according to Shmuel, Keshehorginoto, when you kill this wild or mad dog, Ein horginoto ela b'davar hanizrak. You don't kill him without using something that's thrown at it. Why? The chiyef bay. Okay? Why? Because what happens then if somebody has rubbed against this animal? Mistaken. Okay? They're putting their life in danger. Okay? Denachit le. And if he was bitten by this animal, mayit. It's probable that he would die. And so the Gemara clarifies further the Braita. Okay? D'chayef be mistaken mai takanate. Okay, that if the animal has rubbed against him and he becomes dangerously ill, what might be his remedy? Nishalach mane v'nirhit, says the Gemara. What do? Okay, he has to throw off his clothes and run. Okay, Rav Huna bereid the Rav Yoshua. We have an incident where Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, chaf be chad minayhu b'shuka, that one of these kinds of dogs sort of rubbed, came close to him while he was in the marketplace. Okay, and what did he do? Right, chaf be chad minayhu b'shuka, shalachinhu lamane v'rahet. He took off his clothes. Don't assume that they went naked, but took off the majority of his clothes and he ran away. Amar, and he says, Kiyamti ba'atzmi, hachachma tihya ba'aleha. I fulfilled the part of the pasuk that basically says wisdom preserves the life of those who have it. In other words, I knew what to do under those circumstances. Now, Gemara continues, Denachid le might, that if it bites him, he dies. Ma'ita kante, what might be his remedy? Amar Abaye, nete mashcha da'apa dedidchra. Okay? He says, what happens that you take, he says, the skin, right, of a male hyena, tovale, and you write on it, Ana Palanaya Bar Planayata, I am so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, Amashcha da'apa dichra kativna alach, on the skin, the hide of a male hyena, I write this, Kante klirus. Okay, and I write the following, Kante klirus, which basically is sort of indicating he takes his chances in the lottery, something of that nature. So the Gemara says, Va'amre la, and some say he should write, Kante kalorus, right? And others say he writes the following, divine name, right? Ya Hashem tzvakot, right? Amen, Selah. Okay, in other words, he writes some sort of an incantation okay, using the divine name. And what happens? Uneshalchinhu lemane, right? And then he takes off, he removes his clothes. V'likbarinhu be kivrei ad tresa yarche shata. And he buries it in a cemetery, right? In a grave for 12 months, okay, of the year. What happens afterwards? V'nafkinhu v'niklinhu batunura. Then he removes it and he places those clothes into an oven, right? And he burns them. V'nivdarinhu lekitmei, right? And then he scatters the ashes, a parashat drachim, on crossroads of a in a roadway. Now, v'hanach tresa yarche shata, and these 13 or 12 months of the year, kishate maya, when he drinks water, lo lishte ella begufta dinachasha. He only drinks the water through a copper, I guess I would call it almost straw, a copper tube. Dil machaze bevua deshida velistake. Lest in drinking the water he sees some sort of evil spirit, and therefore it causes him a danger. Right? Kihada Abba Bar Marta, like that which was said by Abba Bar Marta, who Abba Bar Minyume. He's the same as Abba Bar Minyume, Avdale Ime Gufta de Dahava, who's the one whose mother made him a golden tube for that same reason, that same purpose. Now, we come back now once more from our Mishnah. Va'odamar Rabbi Matya. He was quoted with regards to another situation. Rabbi Yochanan chash b'tzafidna. If Rabbi Yochanan says one fears that they may have another kind of illness, Safidna was considered, according to a note that I have here, another illness based on which is the tightening of the throat. Okay? And so therefore what happens? Azal Gaba Dahahi Matronita. He once went to a certain woman who is known for medications, healer. Avdale Milta Chamsha Umale Shabta. And she made him a remedy to take on Thursday and on Friday. Amarla, and he said to her, B'Shabbat Mai, in regards to Shabbos, what am I supposed to do? Remember, there was an issue prohibiting taking medications on Shabbos, right? Because they were concerned about having to grind items, mortar and pestle kind of grinding, okay, on Shabbat. Amarahle, okay, she said with him, Lo tzrichit, you don't need it. I mitztarech namai, and if I need it, what am I to do? Amarahle, she said to him, Ishtabeali de lo megalet. Swear to me that you won't reveal what the, so to speak, prescription, what the medicine is. Ishtaba, he took an oath. La'alaha, okay, the Israel lo megalena. His oath was to the God of Israel, I won't reveal it. Okay, nefak the Resha b'pirka. But afterwards he went out and he spoke about it in a public lesson. So in other words, he revealed it to people. Okay, so the Gemara says, wait a second, Vaha ishtabala, but here he took an oath to her. And the Gemara answers, the Yisrael lo megalena, to the God of Israel, he would not reveal it. Ha le'amo Yisrael megalena, but here to the Jewish people, he would reveal it. Vaha ika chilul Hashem, But then isn't that still a desecration of the divine name? The Megale Lama Ikara. That he basically revealed it from the very beginning. Mai Avdale. Okay. So what was it that she prepared for him? Amar Rav Acha Bered Rav Ami, he said as follows: Mei Saor, it was water that was come from leaven, shemen zayit with olive oil, umelach and salt.
Uh-oh.
Namely, that it
Breaking up. Anybody got him?
Not me.
Yeah, no, we lost him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he froze.
It's not that cold out.
Oh, he's off now.
He's got to reboot.
Rebooting. There he is. Back on.
okay, I don't know what happened, guys.
I don't either.
Okay. All right. So what happened? He said, Amar Abai Ana Avdei Lakulhu Velo Itasai. I tried all of these, he said, and I wasn't cured. Ad Amarli Hahutaya, until a particular Arab told me to do the following. I take a shaita, the zeta de la malu tilta. Okay. He said, told him to take olive seeds that are less than 1/3 ripe, right? That they did not, de lo malu tilta, they did not come to 1/3. Ukalinhu binura, and you place these on your teeth, right? And they actually know on the top of a hoe, amara chadata, ba'adbek b'chave dire, and then you put these on your gums. Now, that would seem to imply that this illness, Safidna, was very similar to what we would call scurvy, for a lack of vitamin C. Okay, right? So that was the implication. He says, and what happens? Avdi hachi v'itasai. I did it according to that, and I was cured, he said. Okay, so the Gemara asks, on what basis? Where does this disease come from? Mechamime chamime dechite. Okay, from eating hot, right, wheat bread, right, umeshire kasa the harsana, okay, and also fish that comes too hot from eating it in oil. Umai simane, and what are the signs of this illness? Kad rame mide bekache. He says basically, when one puts something, right, between the teeth, va'ata dama mi beidare, and then comes blood from the gums, okay, from between the teeth and the gums. Okay, that's one of the first signs of scurvy. The problem is that it doesn't remain just as a problem in the mouth. It eventually has an impact on one's intestines as well. Rabbi Yochanan kichash b'tzapidna. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan was concerned that he suspected that he might have this illness. Avad hachi b'shabta, and he did prepared the medication as described on Shabbos. V'itase, and he improved. He was cured. Rabbi Yochanan hechi avid hachi. And so the Gemara asks, Rabbi Yochanan, how could he have done that if we're not supposed to prepare medicines on Shabbat? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, he said as follows, Shane tzafidna, okay, that this illness of tzafidna, of scurvy, is different. Ho'il u'marchil bapeh v'gomer b'vnei me'ayim. Since it only begins in the mouth
And it ends up in the intestines.
enters into the intestines and becomes quite dangerous. Okay, so in other words, because it has,
Sakaris nefashis.
yeah, exactly, because it can bring fatal injury. That's the case. It puts one's life in danger, and that's an important lesson because we're going to see not just in general, but the Gemara is going to pick up on this as a theme. Okay. Umar Rav Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Chia bar Abba says to him, Kiman, according to whom did you feel that it was acceptable to you put medication in for this illness on Shabbat? Ki Rabbi Matya ben Cheresh, like him. The Amar, who says, Hachoshesh bepiv metilin lo sam b'Shabbat. Does he say that if one suspects an illness in his mouth, that it's permissible to put medication on Shabbat? Amarle, he said, Shani Omer, I'm sorry, Bazo, in this case, velo ba'acheret, and not in other situations.
Not a general rule.
Okay? So in other words, he was accepting that minority opinion of Rabbi Matya ben Charash, okay? But implying that because this is unique, it's not really a minority opinion, okay? And in that case, since it could lead to sakanat nefashot, even on Shabbat, it would be permitted. So we said what happens. Gemara now is going to go into some further discussion of other illnesses and other issues of sakanat nefashot and medications with Shabbat.
This is a very far diversion from Yom Kippur.
Well, true, but the parallel, I would say my connection, okay, that I would give is the same way you have certain prohibitions on Shabbat, they also apply to Yom Kippur. Okay? Remember we saw the Gemara once suggested they were both called Shabbat Shabbaton. And so therefore, question might underlying this would be, what about this issue on Yom Kippur? So what about other illnesses? Did we say that scurvy in this case is the only exception? Or are there other exceptions? And so Gemara picks up. Lema Messiah. Perhaps we'll say that this Braita supports him. Misha achazo yerakon. What about if somebody is struck with another illness called yerakon? Okay. Here, this is compared to today's source, hepatitis. Machilino to besar hamor. We feed him donkey meat, says one. Okay? Right? Mish neshacho kelev shoteh, and one who was bitten by a mad dog. Machilino to mechatzar kaved shalom. We feed him from a lobe of the liver of this dog. V'achoshesh b'fiv, and one who suspects he has this illness of the mouth, we said scurvy. Matilin lo sam b'Shabbat. We permit him to make medicine and put it in his mouth on Shabbos. Divrei Rabbi Matya ben Charash. These are all the statements of Rabbi Matya. But the sages say, Be'elu ein bahem mishum refuah. In these others, we say there is no clear proof, I'm going to say for the moment, of it being valid medicine. Be'elu lema'ute mai. And why did we refer to these others? To exclude what? My love lema'ute sam. Wasn't it then to exclude any medications? No, says the Gemara. Lema'ute makizin dam lesurunchi. No, it comes to exclude the example of a different approach medicinally, namely bloodletting.
Bloodletting.
Okay, that might help an illness called surunchi, and surunchi was suggested to be a kind of diphtheria, okay, which sort of causes the person to suffocate, right? So what happens? Okay, as the Gemara continues, Hachinami, here too, mistabra, and this seems logical to Tanya, because we have a Braita that says, Shlosha Dvarim Amar Rabbi Yishmael B'Rabbi Yossi, Sheshama Mishum Rabbi Matya ben Charash. These three things, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yossi, in the name of Rabbi Matya, right? Makizin dam l'surunchi b'Shabbat, says that we do permit bloodletting for this on Shabbat. Umi shenishchol kelev shoteh, and one who was bitten by a mad dog, machilin oto mechatzer kaved shalom. We give him from a lobe of the liver of the animal. V'hachoshesh b'piv, and one who suspects he has this illness of the mouth, scurvy, matilin lo sam b'Shabbat. We allow him to put medicine in his, on Shabbat. V'chachamim omrim. However, the sages said, be'elu ein bahem mishum refuah. And these, assuming these others, clear proof of a medicinal value. Be'elu lema'ute mai. And these come to exclude what? My love la'atarte batraita. Isn't it to include all these last two items? Ulama'ute deresha, and to exclude the first item? No. Itarte deresha kamayaita. Okay? No, in other words, he says, it comes to the first two items of the first Braita, ulama'ute de seifa, and to exclude the latter part of the regard to the medicine on Shabbat, where the rabbis would agree with Rabbi Marta that for that illness, right, one would permit. Okay, we're going to the Amud Beis, Tashma. Okay, as we continue now, right? We got a lot of Gemara today. Okay, Datani Rabba Bar Shmuel, he says, and now we're sort of back to what we saw earlier regarding a discussion on Yom Kippur. Remember, it ended with discussion of a pregnant woman smelling the food. Tashmas is a Braita. Datani Rabba Bar Shmuel, he taught, Ubara Shehericha, a pregnant woman who smells the food and craves it. Ad shetashuv nafsha. We feed her until she is satisfied. Umisha neshcho kelev shoteh, and one who was bitten by a mad dog, machilinoto mechatzar kaved shalo. We feed him from the lobe of the liver of the dog. V'achoshesh b'piv, and one who suspects he has this illness of the mouth, scurvy, matilin lo sam b'Shabbat. We allow him to place medicine in his mouth on Shabbos. Divrei Rabbi Elazar, she'amar mishum Rabbi Matya ben Charash. The Chachamim omrim, but the sages say, Bazo v'lo ba'acheret. In this case, and in no other. Bazo ahya. In this case, what should we be referring to? Ilema ubara. If we're talking about the pregnant woman, pshita, that's obvious. Ubara, mi'ika leman de amar delo. Regarding the pregnant woman, is there anyone who's going to say that you don't give her food?
Food?
Okay, because you could argue it's not just for the safety of the woman, it's safety for you.
Also.
Okay. Ubara mi ikalamanda, right? Ele lav asam shmamina. But rather, when we said this, we're referring to the issue of medication on Shabbat. Rav Ashi Amar, he says, matnitin nami daika. Our Mishnah also is very precise and specific. It says, Va'od Amar Rabbi Matya ben Charash, hachoshesh b'piv matilin lo sam b'Shabbat. Okay, and further, it said Rabbi Matya ben Charash, one who suffers pain in the mouth, places the medicine in his mouth on Shabbat. Right? V'lo plige Rabbanan alei, and it doesn't say that the rabbis disagreed with him. Ve'im ita de plige Rabbanan alei, and if it were such that the rabbis did disagree with him, li'arvinhu v'litninhu, let them put the two statements together and teach it that way. V'liflegu Rabbanan b'sefa, and let the rabbis argue with him at the end of the Mishnah. Shma mina. In other words, and therefore we learn from that the rabbis did not disagree with him. Going back now further to our Mishnah, Mipnei shesafek nefashotu. Why? Because there's a concern about life-threatening. Lamali tu lememar b'chol safek nefashot dochet haShabbat. Why is it necessary to come to say that in life-threatening situations we are overrides Shabbat? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Okay, next rest of the Amud really well worth keeping in mind. Lo safek Shabbat zo bilvad amru, ela afilu sfek Shabbat acheret. Not only is it a concern, I'm going to say, for this Shabbat, but it could be concern for future Shabbatot as well. Right? Hechidami, how is that possible? Asks the Gemara, Kagon de amaduha letimnaya yomi. It's, for example, where a situation where they determined that the medication had to be taken over the course of 8 days. V'yoma kama shabta, and the first day is a Shabbat. Mahu detema, what are you going to say? La'akev ad la'orcha, that you're going to say that he should wait until the evening. Ki heche delo nechul alei trei shabda, but in order so that he doesn't have to wait and suffer for a second Shabbat, kamash malan. Therefore, it comes to teach us, all right, so that he doesn't, you might say, maybe you just skip it the first week, and all he has to do is desecrate one Shabbat instead of 2, right? Comes to teach us that's not the case. Tanya nami hachi. Not only that, but we have a braita that tells us we may heat up water for somebody who is ill. B'Shabbat, bein lahashkoto, bein lahavroto, whether it's to give him to drink or for his washing body health purposes. Velo Shabbat zo bilvad amru, ella the Shabbat acheret, and not simply for this current Shabbat, but for Shabbat that may follow. Ve'ein omrim, and we don't say namtin lo shema yavri. Let's put it off because maybe he will get better. Ela mechamim lo miyad, but rather we heat it up immediately. Mepnei shesfek nefashot dochet Shabbat, because life-threatening situations overcome Shabbat. V'lo sfek Shabbat zo ela afilu sfek Shabbat acheret. And not only does it apply to a concern about this Shabbat, but about the Shabbat to follow. Okay? Now, says the Gemara, furthermore, ve'ein osin dvarim halalu, and we don't do these things, lo al yedei goyim, not by Gentiles, v'lo al yedei kutiim, and not by the Samaritans, ela al yedei gedolei Yisrael, but rather it should be done, excuse me, by the Gedolim. In other words, by people who are knowledgeable, scholars. Ve'ein omrim ya'asu dvarim halalu lo al pi nashim v'lo al pi kutiyim. And don't say that these actions should be performed based on the advice of women or on the advice of Samaritans. Aval mitztarfin ladat acheret. But their advice does corroborate, go along with the advice of others. Okay? Now, Tanu Rabbanan, we have a Braita that teaches specifically. Mefakhin pikuach nefesh b'Shabbat. One becomes involved in saving of life on Shabbat. V'hazariz harei zeh meshubach. And one who is vigilant about this is to be praised. Ve'ein sarich litol reshut mi beit din. And one does not have to gain permission from the court. Ha-ketzad, what kind of an example might we give? Ra'at tinok shenafal layam. If he sees a child falling into the sea. Poresh mitzuda uma'alehu. He throws out a net and raises the child from the water. V'hazariz harei zeh meshubach. And the one who is vigilant is praiseworthy. Ve'ein sarich litol reshut mi beit din. And he does not have to require permission from the court. Va'afal gav dekat sayid kavorei. Even though it's possible that he might catch fish
It's a
in the
favorite.
net and be doing so. Another example. Ra'at tinok shenafal labor. He sees a child fall into a pit. Oker, excuse me, Oker chuya uma'alehu. He digs a section on the edge of the pit, okay, as if it becomes almost lower level than ground level, which means it's as if he's digging a step, okay, and he raises the child up. V'hazariz harei zeh meshubach. And one who is vigilant is praiseworthy. Ve'ein sarich litol reshut mi beit din. And he doesn't ask the permission of the beit din. Afal gav the metakein darga. Even though it's like he is arranging, making a step. Right? Furthermore, says the Gemara, Ra'ah shenin ala delet b'fnei tinok. One sees that a door is locked, okay, and a child is locked inside. Shovra umotzio. He can break down the door and remove the child. V'hazariz harei zeh meshubach. And one who's vigilant is praiseworthy. Ve'ein sarich litol reshut mi beit din. And one does not have to get the permission of the court. Va'afal gav dekam mechavein. Okay, even though it may be his intent, lamit bar b'shifei. In other words, to break that wood up into boards and use it or sell it later. Mechabin umafsikin mepnei hadleika. Another example that one can put out a fire. How? By taking containers, utensils, let's say, remember earthenware jugs filled with water and setting up a barrier, right? When there's a fire, b'Shabbat. V'hazariz harei zeh meshubach. And the one who does so vigilant about it is praised. Ve'ein sarich litol reshut mi beit din. And one does not need to gain the permission of the court. V'afal gav deka memachech makonacheh. Okay, even though it's such that one might say, well, you're heating up the water, and that's almost like cooking, or you're creating coals, and that could be used for cooking. So the Gemara now has an interesting point. Why did we need all of these different examples? Wouldn't one have been sufficient to give us the message? utsricha. And we need all of these examples, says the Gemara. De'i ashma'in and yam, had we only given the example of the sea, mishum da'ad hachi, v'hachi azile. Why? Because the sea, the flow of the current could have taken the child away, right? Could have pulled him out, right? Aval bor, the kayatev, but the pit, where the child, so to speak, is just sitting there, just located there, emelo, I might say no, sricha. Therefore, it was needed to say it. Furthermore, v'iyashma'in bor, and had I only taught the example of the pit, mishum dekam mav'it, there because I might argue the child was afraid. Aval ninala delet, but in regards the locked door, efshar diyativ bahai gisa, it's possible that the person might sit on the other side of the door, umishabe shle ba'am guze, and he would, let's say, make break nuts, entertain the child, keep the child calm, talking to the child, doing other things, until Shabbat is over, okay? And then take the child out, stricha. Therefore, we needed that example, okay? Furthermore, the Braita said, mechabin umafsikim. We can extinguish the fire by placing this barrier. Lamali. Why do that? Da'afilu lechatzer acheret. Why? Because we're concerned that the fire might go into another courtyard. Right? So furthermore, the Gemara now tells us, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Lo halchu b'pikuach nefesh achar haro. Namely, we do not, when it's instances of life-threatening, we don't follow the principle of majority. Hechidami, how is that possible? Gemara tells us now. Ein nema de'ika tisha Yisrael v'goy echad beinehu. If we say it's a situation, let's say, where we have 9 Jews and 1 Gentile, Ruba Yisrael minhu, the majority are Jews. Okay? Ela palga upalga. But let's say it was half and half, sfeik nefashot lahakel. Since we don't know the situation for sure, half and half, and there was a doubt, we follow the lenient practice, right? And therefore, in that life-threatening situation, we save. So the Gemara says, Ela de'ika tisha goyim v'Yisrael echad. Perhaps in that situation, we'll flip it and say there were 9 Gentiles and 1 Jew. Ha nami pshita, says the Gemara. This also is obvious. Dahava le kavua. Why? Because he has a specific place. V'chol kavua kemechze al mechze dami. In any place we know that there is a specific place, a specific location of the person, that's like half and half, right? So the Gemara clarifies that a little bit more as we go on. Lo tzricha, the parush lechatzer acheret. Well, no, maybe it's a situation that we don't have to say that because maybe they went to a different courtyard. Mahu detema. What are you trying to tell us? Kol de paresh, meruba paresh. We say that if those groups separated, it's separated from the majority. Okay? And therefore, Kamash Malan comes to teach us that here too we say that one doesn't go after the majority in a situation of life threatening. How do we clarify that? Amy, is that really the case? let's take the following, says the Gemara. V'amar Rabbi Asi amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Asi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Tisha goyim v'Yisrael echad. A situation where we have 9 Gentiles and 1 Jew. Ba'otah chatzer. And they're all in the same courtyard. Mefakhin. And say a wall of the fell in, right? What do? All right? We clear it, right? We remove the debris. B'chatzer acheret. If the one went to another courtyard, ein mefakhin. Then we don't remove the debris. Lo kasha. If that's not a problem. Ha. In one case, the parush kuhu was where they all left that courtyard. Ha, the parush miktsatayu. And in the other case, we say that we do remove it because not all of them left that courtyard. So the Gemara says, Umi amar Shmuel hachi. And did Shmuel really say this? Vahatnan. Don't we have taught elsewhere in a Mishnah? Matzah batinok mushlach. If we find an abandoned child, imrov goyim, if most of the people in that, say, town, community, are Gentile, we're going to assume, goy, that the child is a Gentile. Ve'imrov Yisrael, and if most of the children, if most of the residents are Jewish, Yisrael, right? We assume the child is Jew. Mechetza al mechetza. But if they're half and half, Yisrael. We'll assume that they're Jewish. Va'amar Rav. And Rav responded, Lo shanu ela lahachioto. That was only taught in a situation where it comes to give sustenance to the child. Aval liyachaso. But to determine the child's family status, lo, that's not the case. Let's go on just a tiny bit to 85a, right? Ushmuel amar, but Shmuel says, lefakeach alav et hagav, that in a situation where we have a let's say debris falling, right? Okay, in this case, ki itmar de Shmuel, as it was said by Shmuel, aresha itmar. It was said in regards to the earlier, the first halacha, imrov goyim goy. If most of them are Gentile, we assume the child is Gentile. Amar Shmuel, so Shmuel ule inyan pikoach nefesh eino kain. But in the matter of saving life, that's not the case. We save the life of the child regardless of whether we know that it's Gentile or Jewish. Right? So we'll stop right there. And then we'll pick up tomorrow with the rest of this discussion. Okay? And again, we have a little bit longer text, so we'll try to get through it the best we can. All right, everybody? So have a healthy 4th of July. If you're going to participate in group activities, stay safe and stay well, everybody.
You too.
Rabbi Green.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Rabbi Green.
Thank you, Reb.